attending. And we may have one more as well.
He actually needs to lead today's meeting since I do have to leave early today.
So I believe we are ready to start.
Okay, just one moment.
You want me to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and then when co-chair joins, you could take over? Does that work? Okay. All right. So officially call today's OCAPIA meeting to order on this beautiful Friday morning, Friday, May 3rd. And we'll start off with a roll call.
Good morning, everyone. Please signify by saying present or aye. Co-chair Leung.
Here, present.
Co-chair Pan. Vice Chair Tanega.
Present.
Commissioner Bulling. Thank you. Commissioner Rajagopal.
Present.
Commissioner Akaraju.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Iglesias is attempting to join right now. Commissioner Dirting.
Present.
Rep Wynn. Senator Dembro.
Present.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, okay, so we'll move on. So first thing on the agenda is our agenda and minutes approval by unanimous consent. These were already sent out previously, but if you need a moment to review any notes, here's your chance to. Oh, okay. To say so. So if you're all good with how things look, we just need approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions or concern? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone who say nay? Okay, all right, approved. So today's agenda and the minutes from our last meeting have been approved. All right, so we're going to open this up next for public comment. Are there any folks who are signed up for public comment? Okay, looks like we have no one signed up for public comment. So now we're going to move on to commissioner check-in. So this is a time for any of our commissioners who are joining us today to share about what's going on within the community that you want to share or inform commissioners about and to encourage them to join or participate in.
Is it just volunteer? Not one by one. Okay. Well, if it's okay with everybody, I'd like to make a request during this update that will hopefully give more time for deliberation and a vote during agenda item regarding priorities under new business. And thank you to our co-chairs for giving me the opportunity to raise my request during today's meeting. I have a request for all the commissioners' consideration. It aligns with our statute, one of our 7 statute strategic priorities of jobs and economy, and it's also falls under our ORS duties and additional duties to identify barriers and advise state agencies and officials issues related to those barriers, make some recommendation and improvements to the programs. So my request is to write a letter to the governor and or appropriate agency with a request to modernize the state of Oregon Certificate Office of Business Inclusion and Diversity, also known as COVID with a B for boy, not V for Victor, And I'm paraphrasing, according to the COVID website, their goal is to level the playing field and close the gap between BIPOC communities and women and their historically limited access to capital. Anecdotally, I am learning from a variety of sources that the COVID application process today is laborious, cumbersome, and creates many barriers for those who this program is designed to help. So some examples of what I've heard from folks. A Hispanic-owned food truck business owner stated that it requires a 6-month lead time, as COVID requires a review process, site visit, birth certificate, passport, tax return, and a number of documentation. An Asian-owned small consulting business owner stated that in addition to going through that laborious process, you must go through the same process annually. So you have to like start over annually with all that. And then a 51% woman-owned business expressed her frustration that her and her husband's small contractor business could not bid for certain government projects because it requires COVID certification. And according to COVID, the woman must also have an Oregon Construction Contractors Board CCB license. It doesn't matter if she is the CEO, COO, and wears all the other hats in the business, nor does it matter that her husband, 49% business owner, has the CCB license. This COVID requirement restriction significantly limits their small family business from capitalizing on the construction industry's economic dollars, and looking at how do we increase a woman-owned business's equitable access and opportunity to capitalize on the construction industry's economic dollars. And then Commissioner Aparna Rajagopal Durbin also has her own lived experience that she'll share after my share. What's more is that as a result of these barriers, other government agencies are having to compensate and create their own process to level the playing field, therefore duplicating efforts. And I'll finish up with 2 more points and with my request again is that did you know that the state of Oregon has $3.1 billion contracting budget and only 10.9% are going to women and people of color, and only 1% are going to Asian Pacific Islander, and only to a number of companies. So could modernizing the COVID application process help increase that percentage, that 1% API share of the state's $3.1 billion contracting budget? And lastly, I've also learned that at the federal level, modernizing is something they're proactively implementing. The Department of Transportation announced that it is significantly modernizing the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, aka DBE. They go on to say that the programs were created over 40 years ago and that they are modernizing to improve provisions for the benefits of the program participants. So I propose we begin with an inquiry, like perhaps COVID is aware of the need to modernize. And if they are following step with the federal government, we could request what that looks like. And if there's an opportunity for us to partner or support them, we could learn if they're facing their own barriers to modernizing and ask what can we do to help advance that to reduce the barriers in the application process. So I'm going to end with the question of the commission, like, are you aligned with addressing some of these issues? How do you think we should address it? The idea I have is to begin with an inquiry letter with potential partnerships and other signers from our sister advocacy groups, the Oregon Commission of Black, Hispanic, and Women Affairs. And then if we need to, maybe sometime down the line, we could, form a subcommittee or have representation should they form a task force if and when they modernize. And if you are all aligned, I could draft a letter, and anybody else who wants to help me with editing. And once complete, we could circulate it for review, approval, and signatures. Thank you. That was a mouthful. And then I'm not sure if this is the opportunity, if Commissioner Aparna would like to share her story as well.
Sure, I can give a short, just a shorter update. As I don't have anything new to report since our last commissioner meeting on building community and any of the other actions I've taken on behalf of OCAPIA. I can just add that I've been in touch with Commissioner Durding to talk about her priorities, and in this conversation around COVID, shared with her that as a small women and minority owned business that's been in operation since 2015 and was just incorporated in Oregon more recently, it has been a really, and I'm a former lawyer and I know how to navigate these processes. It's not like, and I have a lot of privilege. And even with all of that, it has been months and months of trying to get COVID certified in Oregon as a woman and minority owned business. And it has been incredibly invasive. We have to prove our ethnicity and gender with birth certificates, and not every birth certificate has that information on it. We have to show bank signature cards. Not every bank provides signature cards. We have to create resumes. We have to provide documented proof of all of our contributions to the business. Our business started in 2015, and I don't have receipts of my personal money that I spent in launching my business. And we've been, and because of that lack of documented proof, we were initially rejected from COVID certification. And I have had to push it through. And it's been, for me, as someone who is submitting proposals for state contracts for doing DEI work, it has been in state contracts that prioritize COVID certified businesses. I am finding it that there's been a lot of barriers. And so I shared my story with Commissioner Durding, as I would be fully on board for a revamp. We're almost finally going to be certified. So I don't no longer finally have I don't have a stake in this. So I want to share that, like, I'm happy to also step out if there's a conflict of interest, given we're kind of in our own process of being COVID certified. But I just wanted to share my story in the hopes that you all would be able to sign on to whatever Commissioner Durding writes.
Thank you.
I see a message from Director Saunders that we can invite the teams to DASP for additional context for disparity study, as well as Biz Oregon to report out the process of adoption by the commission as a priority. I see other folks' hands are up. I think Senator Denbrough, your hand was up first, and then Senator Bulling, not Senator, Commissioner Bulling afterwards.
Okay, actually, I defer to Senator Bulling. I think he had his hand up first.
I'm very glad.
Welcome
I'm not
to
a
the
senator.
team. Welcome to the team, Lauren.
Thank you, Senator. I would share some of the other commissioners who have spoken on COVID's concerns. There's a clear lack of staffing capacity. There's a clear lack of ability to navigate that system. But I would strongly oppose anything that changes how the construction COVID certifications currently work. When you do not have a requirement for someone to have a basic understanding or demonstrated bona fide skills within construction, what we see is we get a lot of effectively token or shell companies that are quote unquote women owned, quote unquote minority owned, but that person is being used to access the requirements that we have in ODOT to have a 24% COVID contractor pool of that work done. Frankly, it undermines the whole process of how we would like to see this done in a better way. We need to make sure that this goes hand in hand with workforce equity components. And I strongly believe that if we want to build a diverse pool of contractors within construction exclusively, as this is where my expertise falls, that we need to make sure that we are building up and enabling people of color and women who have those skills to start a business. And if we remove requirements that people do not need to have certified experience within the industry, it undermines people of color, it undermines women, and it especially makes it harder for those contractors, as you need a lot of specific skills to function in construction. And what we have seen too with some of the non-union COVID certified contractors is they have a lot of shell companies where they own property and we cannot have COVID audit them. And we believe, based on the amount of things that they own, that they no longer qualify for this. Again, I think coming back to it, COVID is a great system. There's some clear flaws, and COVID really hurt a lot of what COVID has. We need to increase the staffing, but for construction, we cannot remove the requirements around skills in the industry, and I would strongly oppose anything with that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, first of all, addressing this challenge is exactly why this commission exists, I think. And so I think it's very much in line with the mission of this commission. And I would say perhaps a partnership with some of the other advocacy commissions might be in order because it's obviously an overlapping, kind of issue. I do, I'm sympathetic to the points that Commissioner Bowling raised. He has a lot of expertise in this area. And, I would hope that he would be engaged as, outreach is developed. But, especially because we are talking about the executive branch employment, and this is the governor's commission. She's the head of the executive branch. I think this commission is really very well poised to address this, and I hope we do. I mean, it sounds like the issue is not that we want to see standards, um, watered down, or as Commissioner Bowling mentioned, we do have a long history of abuse of this status. So we need to make sure that it's used right. But it sounds like the process itself can be intimidating, and that those who are applying need more support in order to get through it more easily. All of those, I think, are goals that this commission and the others could advocate for. And if it requires some additional resources for COVID, then I think that needs to be part of the request.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you all for sharing. I see my co-chair is on, so co-chair, please take over for this part. And I think Commissioner Bowling had his hand up again.
I would just echo what Senator Dembro has said there. And I mean, within my own organization and daytime job, I mean, we currently have a woman who is trying to get her COVID certification, and it is incredibly arduous and it's incredibly difficult. And even though she is a journeyman iron worker, she has been required to come back and do more training just to prove that she can verify that. I mean, obviously, there is a huge need to make that process easier, to make it more transparent and accessible to folks. If you're not an attorney, or even if you are an attorney and that's still hard, that's clearly an issue. But again, there needs to be some sort of process to audit and ensure that this is not being abused and cheated on.
For sure. Hello, everybody. Before we continue forward, I want to apologize for being a little late. I had some technology issues. I know, right, Senator Dembro? We have technology issues. It's like, well, come on. But
Never. This is Teams. Come on.
But anyway, let's continue to move forward. I think we're on commissioner updates. So Senator Dembro, I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you. Just again, just to wrap up this issue, do we have a sense of what next steps could look like? And I mean, at some point, this may become a new business item, I suppose, for if we're going to take a position. But I don't know, Terrence, you have any thoughts about like how we get from here to there?
Absolutely. So first step is voting on it as a commission, as one of the priorities. I believe that will be in new business when we're discussing all priorities that commissioners would have. And then I think it's dependent on what the commission wants to do, whether that's creating a subcommittee, probably led by Commissioner Derding and Bowling, I would imagine, to draft that initial letter. And then also in the leadership meeting this afternoon with all of the chairs, I feel like this is a good opportunity to bring up other joint commission ideas as well to gain some more support, and ideally to report out to the other commissions during their public meetings, adopt this as a priority as well, and kind of have like a subcommittee from all 4 commissions. And then we, in my opinion, start to work with the DAS team for the disparity study through Christopher Wilson, I want to say. I might forget his name off the top of my head, or at least his last name. And then also inviting Biz Oregon to one of the future meetings as well to report out on what issues that they've seen from their level, and then to talk about substantial changes. Subsequently, also working with the governor policy advisor and Andre Bueller to elevate this directly to the governor, and ideally have this as one of those items that is on her radar as the governor, and then we can start working on solutions. Welcome any other thoughts as well, if I may have some blind spots.
All right, so I do want to say it could be made a vote if anyone wants to make it a motion and someone seconds it. After that, we can continue to move forward with commissioner updates. So just something to think about as we move forward. And again, just to continue to move forward with the agenda. Senator Denbrough, did you have any updates you want to give to us in regard to what you've been up to in the past few months?
Yeah, I'll just say I've been, well, actually, before I do, I think Vice Chair Tamega had something he wanted to offer, and then
Yeah,
I'll go.
thank you, Senator.
Yeah.
I just want to know, Director Saunders, when you say Biz Oregon, is there like a specific person we're looking at Biz Oregon, or?
I do not know that individual off the top of my head, but I will be connecting with them as an agency and likely just connecting with their agency head and then determining what would be the best individual to connect with. And that's something that I can easily do.
And I can also support that because I'm actually working directly with Business Oregon through my other position with Paco. So I'm working with them every day. So,
Yeah.
so
I'm
if you
actually
need that support.
I'm very tight with Soporn, who's
Yeah.
the executive director of Business Oregon, so I can also connect with them as well if that's needed. So just let me know how I can help.
Yeah, let's put our minds together on that, and I'll likely send an email right after this meeting just to connect the three of us and determine next steps.
Sounds good. Alrighty.
Yeah, great. So no, I'll just say most of my time these days is spent on two things. You know, first of all, as many of you know, I'm not running for re-election, so this is my last year, and I have my fingers in a lot of pies, and trying to find other people's fingers to replace mine in those pies is taking up a lot of my time. But you know, over the last couple of months since the last session was over, we're doing a lot of examining of our education funding system. You know, I think it's no surprise to any of you that our school districts are facing real challenges. We're seeing a number of layoffs happening, and it is, you know, quite stressful for communities. You know, largely these are the result of moving away from the COVID experience, you know, which has had several effects. You know, one is that, you know, on the positive side, we got a lot of federal dollars during COVID, and districts used them well, I think, for the most part, and created programs to support students that have proven their worth. But that's one-time money, and now it's going away, or it has gone away. And even though the legislature gave a big increase to education funding last time, it's not enough to fully replace those lost COVID dollars. So that's a real challenge. The second is, you know, as you know, we went through a couple of years of really serious inflation. And that meant, you know, if you wanted to keep your staff whole, you're looking at big cost of living increases, which has made negotiations very difficult in the different districts. And the districts have the only way they can meet those increased costs is by cutting programs, to make up for it. And then finally, we are seeing a reduction in student enrollment. This is something to some extent, COVID exacerbated that, but it's something we knew was coming just from demographics. Oregon has the lowest birth rate in the country, and we are not seeing as much in-migration as we have in the past. And so as a result, the number of students is going down. Schools are funded on a per student basis. And so every student less means less money for that school. But it doesn't necessarily lower the expenses for the school. If you have one student less, you don't cancel a class, right? You don't. So we're in the middle of just a lot of discussions of maybe we need to do our education funding in a different way. We need to look at the district needs in a different way, and you may see some serious proposals coming in the 2025 session. We'll see. The challenge is we don't necessarily have more revenue coming in, and so where we get the dollars is a real question. And it's equally serious, if not more so, in the world of higher education, post-secondary. And, there too, we don't want to reduce the investments in higher ed and move them over to K-12. That's not getting us anything. In terms of meeting our needs. So it's a real challenge. So there's part of me that is really delighted that I'm not coming back next year. But there's also a part that, makes me really want to try to get things set up as best I can before I leave. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm gonna echo what Vice Chair Tenega said about thank you for your contributions to the state and to our communities. I'm learning a lot, and I've living my entire journey through the political world. I started when I met you, actually. So ever since then, you've been a good role model for me. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then moving forward, does anyone want to share what they have going on? And we'll try to make it quick because we do need to. We are getting close to our next agenda item by the time, so let's try to keep it a little short.
Yeah, I can go next. So I'll try to be as quick. Since I did not attend the March one, I just wanted to let you know that Commissioner Rajagopal Durbin and I, we worked together to submit a testimony for the Senate Bill 1583, and I'm so happy to know that it passed. Then on April 20th, I hosted a table for OCAPIA at OSU India Night, and we had several students showed up who were interested. I plan to follow up with them, and also randomly, because it attracts people from all across the state. I also met with a family from Astoria. I also want to plan to catch up with them to see what their interests are. They were super interested. And then I have been working with a group of students who launched the Oregon Caste Abolition Collective last year. So on April 27th, this last Saturday, we hosted an event to celebrate Dr. Ambedkar, who is the architect of the Indian Constitution. The celebration went very well. It was very well attended by community members and students and faculty from both the universities, University of Oregon and also OSU, and also folks from Eugene and Corvallis. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Akaraju. You've been very connected to the community since you've been in our commission, so thank you so much. I can go ahead and go next. I'll be very quick. we just finished a session in March. So I literally have done nothing but be with my community. I've been getting really connected to the Cambodian community as of recently, especially with Cambodian, Lao, and Thai New Year's, or TLC New Year's, just passing recently. So it's only been a month since session's been over, and I'm actually going on vacation here in next Wednesday. So as soon as I come back, I'm hoping to feel a lot more refreshed and then uh, really get back to it. I'm actually like, when I had first started this year, I was pretty burnt out already. So seeing how passionate all of you are as new commissioners has really helped like rejuvenate my passion as well. So I'm really hoping after this vacation, I'll come back a lot more refreshed. But thank you all for just hanging in tight with me. And I'll pass it off to Vice Chair Tenega. Do you have anything you want to update us with?
Thank you, Co-Chair Pon. I'll be quick. So about a month ago, was that a month ago? PACO, the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce of Oregon, that's my day gig. They asked me, and wearing the OCAPIA hat, to invite Commissioner Derting to their board meeting, and luckily Saba was there to support us. They did not know that there was another Filipino that was a commissioner who was voted in as a commissioner. So that was their surprise. And I think it still is to their surprise that there's two Filipinos on the commission, which is awesome. It's almost unheard of. So that was really nice. Commissioner Durting was able to tell her story and her background, and Saba was able to explain what OACO and the rest of the commissions do. And I think they were all intrigued. I think they really don't know, and I've told them many times, I think they just don't know what our roles are and what we do. But I think with time and the more involvement with us, I think they'll get on board. Second, we just had a meeting, I believe, and Saba, correct me if I'm wrong, was that yesterday with the Port of Portland with Dale Yee? He has something to do. I forgot his role. Forgive me. It's my brain. So anyway, he's inviting myself and Saba and the rest of the commissions to attend their employee resource, and Saba, correct me if I'm wrong, employee resource group. Is that correct? I didn't write any notes. But anyway, to bring awareness to what, because they have their AAPI and BIPOC communities there. So they want to know what we do and how we're supposed to somehow collaborate. So I'll be there at the end of May to speak on behalf of OCAPIA and to give them a little bit of what we do. Saba will be there as well. And there has been an open invitation to the rest of the commissions. And I was hoping, Commissioner Bowling, if you were there, we would come visit, because they did mention that particular wing of the airport, because that's where the Port of Portland is, at the airport where you're doing that extensive work. So that's coming up. I forget the date, but that's forthcoming. And I'll leave it like that. There's a lot more that's coming down the road for me, but I'm gonna keep it short. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. And we are at time, so we do need to transition to old business, but I do want to give people an opportunity to give us a quick 10, 15-second update if they want to give us one. So if no one has any, I'm going to continue to move forward.
Chair Pon, I have one quick question. As far as it goes, there's been a couple states that have passed a mandatory Asian American education unit for their K-12 schools. New Jersey, I think, was the latest one. I've not done my homework on that, to be really honest with you all, but that is definitely something I would be super interested in pursuing through OCAPIA. Senator Denbrough knows way more about education than I do, and I know it gets difficult just with the budget and how curriculum is set, and I think it's a 7-year cycle, but would be very curious to see if other folks are interested in that.
You know, something I might recommend, if I can butt in, Chair, is, you know, we did create an ethnic studies standards process in our social studies. And it is in the process of being rolled out. And I know that Asian American issues are one of the focuses of it. So it may be useful for us as a commission to invite somebody from the Department of Ed, and I could get us hooked up with the right person to come in and talk about what those standards look like and how they incorporate the Asian American experience. And those standards it's not a particular course, they're integrated into the curriculum from kindergarten all the way through grade 12. So and then we can see if that is adequate. It is a big deal to start a whole new course kind of thing. But if we feel that it's not, what they're doing is not adequate, then I think that is something to pursue.
For sure. And Laura or Commissioner Bowling, I think that's a great idea. If we could add it to the upcoming agenda, just to make some space to really dedicate it to. So again, moving forward to old business, I'm gonna pass it to Commissioner Tenega to give us updates on Oregon Rises Above Hate, which is tomorrow, and I hope to see you all there.
Yes, thank you, Coach Arapon. So tomorrow is the big event of Oregon Rises Above Hate, uplift our AAPI communities. It is Asian AAPI Heritage Month this month of May 3rd. It's the third day of May. So that's tomorrow. This evening is actually, and you have to RSVP for this, but there is actually an event that's happening about, I think it starts at 5:30. Unfortunately, I can't make it. It was an RSVP situation for Bill. There's an exhibit for Bill NATO. If you are familiar with him, and I'm not familiar with him, but he has done a lot for the community. And in actuality, his daughter and Ann NATO and her daughter, Erica, they're on the OROC committee, and they're going to have that exhibit this evening. Tomorrow is the main event, starts at 10 o'clock for free admission at the Lansu Chinese Garden, downtown Portland. And before that, there'll be speaking events beforehand. And through Saba's connections and hard work, she's able to secure, fingers crossed, that the governor will be there for the proclamation. And there's going to be many different high-ranking officials. I'm not sure, Senator Demro, if you will be there. Coach Rapon, I'm not sure if any of you will be there, but I encourage you to do so. I'll be there with Saba. Unfortunately, OCAPIA does not have a table, but we will be there and live, so that's good. And yeah, there should be a lot of performances on the hour of different countries represented. And hopefully I secured a food vendor, which is a Filipino food vendor, because I asked Elizabeth Knight, who's the executive director of the Lansu Chinese Garden, if there was ever a Filipino food vendor previously, and there wasn't. So hopefully we'll see that and partake in their food. And if their food is really good, it's from Kubo PDX. So we'll see. And let me pass this on to Saba, since she is also on the committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Tenega. I just wanted to offer one slight note to what you mentioned. The agenda starts right at 9:30. I would love for our commissioners to be there at 9 if possible. There will be some cultural activities that are going to include everyone. I will be there. I know a number of you have responded to me on the invite as well. Would love to have you there. As Co-Chair Pond mentioned in the chat, Rep. Wawin will be there, as will Rep. Daniel Wynn, and a number of other elected officials. So I would love to see you all there.
And then I think Senator Denver has his hand up.
Yeah, I have a question for Saba. Do you know how long it goes? Unfortunately, I have a town hall tomorrow from 9 to 11. But is our activities going on all day? What is the overall agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. The event itself goes all day. So Oregon Rises Above Hate, as Commissioner Tanega mentioned, was created by Ann Nato Campbell out of anti-Asian hate during COVID in partnership with Erica, her daughter, and a lot of API community leaders. And for the last few years, they have utilized the first Saturday of May to kick off API Heritage Month. So that tomorrow's activities include, the garden will be open and free to the public from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., which is irregular hours. The reception itself starts at 9:30 with, I think they're starting a little bit earlier just to incorporate some of that cultural activity, and does wrap up at about 10:30. But there will be items going on throughout the day, all day until 6 p.m. Unfortunately, OCAPIA's portion is from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. And I know this is a busy time for elected officials, so I do apologize. We will make sure we'll do our best to take all the photos and videos to share with you all.
Alrighty. And with that, Saba, up next is actually you with updates on, let's see, updates on A and HPI Heritage Month.
Thank you. I'm going to make it super quick. As Commissioner Tanega mentioned quite a bit of it, we do have a huge number of speaking requests for our commissioners that I've been receiving over the last couple months. And I've been fielding those to both of the co-chairs. Thanks to you for speaking with some of our state employees. As Commissioner Tanega mentioned, he will be speaking with Port of Portland. Co-chair Leon will be speaking with the Women's Bureau with the U.S. Department of Labor, so we're super excited about that. I'll be sharing all of those on social media. Would love for you all to come support. All of them are virtual, with the exception of Port of Portland and tomorrow's event. So would love for you all to come out and support. And because our proclamation celebrations with the community got coupled with Oregon Rises Above Hate, we won't be doing a separate event in Salem this year.
All right, thank you. And up next, we have Commissioner Akaraju with an update on the Muslim Heritage Month.
Yeah, like I just want to give a recap because it has been a while since we talked about it. So the first meeting, I think, if I'm right, we met last December. And I just want to provide a recap because nothing much has happened since then. So initially, I learned from that meeting that Senator Jama's team initially discussed a bill for the Muslim Heritage Month in 2021, but they had some constitutional challenges. And so Kian, who is Senator Jama's chief of staff, said that they plan to consult the legislative legal analysts to figure out a way to move forward. Then our next meeting was supposed to be on April 17th, and we did meet. Commissioner Rajagopal Durbin, Saba Salim, Coordinator Micah from the Health Equity Team, and Director Saunders were present, and including myself. But unfortunately, we did not have the community members as well as Senator Jama's staff. They were not able to attend. So we just shared whatever resources we had at the time, and I don't think they're so important for me to present at this time because I'm actually waiting on the next meeting to happen. Then we will have a substantial, work our content and a strategy hopefully by then. So that's all I have for the Muslim Heritage Month.
Perfect. And just so everyone's aware, I believe primaries is over on May 21st, and that's when I suspect that a lot of electeds will probably have a lot more time on their hands. But again, it is election year for a lot of the reps, so it may be tough to get in contact with some of them. And then with that, we do have we'll move forward with some new business. Unless anyone has any comments on any of the past agenda items. Go ahead, Seba.
Co-Chair Pon, I had one request to swap the environmental scan, so it's before the commission priorities discussion, as the environmental scan will provide a lot of context for that discussion.
Yeah, that sounds good. So you wanted
Thank
to
you.
move.
Chair Pond,
Oh, go
Chair
ahead.
Pond, my apologies, but I'm gonna have to step off in a few minutes. As you know, if there's anything that needs to be voted on, we probably have a majority already, so it probably will be moot if I step off. But I just want to let you know I'm gonna be stepping off in about 10 minutes.
Sounds good. Thank you so much again for giving us the
My
time.
apologies.
No, no worries, no worries. We know you're very busy, so thank you for the time that you do give us. And again, that goes to all of you actually. So, all right. And sorry, so you wanted to move the findings report up to right after the vote?
The environmental scan up to right after the vote.
Okay. So let's go ahead and get started with the vote. So we were invited to join the Environmental Justice Council, and we need to vote to appoint Commissioner Roger Gopal to that council. So unless anyone has any other interest, Commissioner Roger Gopal, do you have any comments you want to make before we do this vote?
I can just be brief that the governor has an EJ council. I was in conversation with Commissioner Ben Duncan from OCAPIA about how to best make use of at least the subject matter expertise I have in working in the environmental field, and knowing that environment is one of our priorities, but that we don't have as much we have so much around education, which is another one of my interests. I thought it would be really good use of my time to be part of this EJ Council, which is dedicated seats for each of the commissions, but the OCAPIA seat has not been occupied for a while. So I spoke with staff members as well within the governor's office to see if I would be a good fit for that council. I have received support from both staff members as well as Commissioner Duncan, who is going to be leaving the council soon. I think one of the really great opportunities there is around data and collect. And I know that there's a lack of data in a lot of different of our priority areas related to the AANHPI community in Oregon. But I think one of the opportunities of being part of this council would be to support more data gathering and making sure that it's disaggregated so that we understand a little more about AANHPI experiences within Oregon as it's related to environmental injustice. So I would be honored if you all voted me to be representing this commission on that council.
For sure. And Senator Deborah, did you have any comments you wanted to make?
Yeah, I just want to say, extend my gratitude to the commissioner for being willing to join. It's really important. The EJ task force has been around for close to 20 years, and it has only recently, I believe, been getting the support that it needs to really be effective. We now actually have a seat for a representative of the EJ task force on the Oregon Climate Action Commission. All of our, we're the recipient of a number of federal grants now, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, and all of them are, they come under the direction of what's called Justice 40, which means that 40% of all investments from those climate funds need to go to support impacted communities. And we need to make sure that we have the oversight and the direct involvement of people from the communities. So I think it's great that this is happening.
For sure. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to vote Commissioner Roger Gopal as our representative for the Environmental Justice Council. Does anyone want to second that motion?
Second.
Perfect. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Perfect. And with that, Commissioner Rajagopal, you are, sorry, Rajagopal, right? Am I saying this correctly? I just want to make sure I'm saying, okay, cool. I'm like kind of hesitant every time, like,
Rajagopal, yeah, that's great. We don't need
Rajagopal.
the Durban. The Durban can be jettisoned because of Oregon history, which we don't need to talk about right now.
Gotcha. Commissioner Rajagopal, you are our representative. Congratulations.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, and then let's go ahead and move on with the environmental scan preliminary findings report, and that will be led by Brianne.
Hi, I'm gonna introduce our fabulous intern, Brianne. So hi, everybody. Kyle Myers, OACO staff. We also have Brianne. I can't, like, because of the whole new Teams thing, I hope that you can see Brianne. Brianne, are you on?
Hi, everyone.
Brianne? Okay, fantastic. So Brianne will be on camera. But I just want to introduce you all to her. She has been a student intern of ours. She's a student at George Fox University. She got kind of assigned to us in maybe February, and she jumped right into this environmental scan project. And she's, been working really hard on it for about 8 weeks. And this is her last day. So you get to see her and all of her amazing work. And I just want to shout out my appreciation to her. She did a really, really incredible job. So if you're hiring, Brianne Moore is amazing. Okay, I will share the screen here and then turn it over to Brianne to share all of her really incredible hard work. Okay. Let's see.
I guess just while you're doing that, thank you for letting me be a part of a little part of what you all do. It's been interesting to be on for the meeting today. And like Kyle mentioned, I've been an intern for just a couple months, but I've really learned a lot from this process, and it's kind of opened my eyes to so much. So many things that I wasn't aware of or didn't think about before. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. So I guess just to get started, I've been working with Dr. Myers, as mentioned, on an environmental scan of Oregon state agencies and potential opportunities for the Oregon Commission on Asian and Pacific Islander Affairs. Today, we'll be sharing some preliminary findings with you to help inform your discussions about Commission priorities and future directions. Just to go over a bit of an overview of what we'll be going over today, we'll cover why this environmental scan is important for OCAPIA, the Commission's 7 strategic priority areas and how the state agencies, boards, and commissions relate to them. We'll also share a few examples of agency programs and state-level data that are relevant to OCAPIA. And then we hope to provide time where you could discuss the findings and how you may want to proceed with collaborating across the state enterprise. All right, so we gathered and summarized information about the Oregon State Government Enterprise so you are aware of the many agencies, boards, and commissions in the state. We did this because OCAPIA has a statutory mandate related to state agencies. This is a snapshot of OCAPIA's statutes, the laws mandating what the commission has been established to accomplish. For this conversation, we are specifically focusing on one duty of the commission, which you can see there that's highlighted, as required under Oregon Revised Statute 185-620, Section 1, Subsection F, which requires OCAPIA to assess all programs of state agencies operating for the benefit of equity for Asian and Pacific Islander American residents of this state and make recommendations to the appropriate agencies for the improvement of these programs. OCAPIA has legal power to influence state-level change for the AAN-HPI communities in Oregon. We hope this presentation inspires you to lean into that power. Here you can see the Oregon Blue Book website, which is a website that has a list of all the agencies, boards, and commissions. We'd encourage you to spend some time exploring the site to learn about all the government organizations and programs. As you can see, there's quite a few agencies, I think over 80, and within the agencies, there are divisions and offices which operate hundreds of different programs for Oregonians. Just to go over the 7 strategic priorities, which guide much of the Oregon Advocacy Commission's work: civic engagement, health and well-being, housing and families, education, environmental justice, justice, safety, and policing, and jobs in the economy. As a commission, you may want to focus in on 2 or 3 of these areas in your work over the next couple of years. We use these 7 priority areas as containers to categorize the state agencies you may want to collaborate with as you narrow in on your commission focus and activities. Within each of these different priority areas, we kind of grouped the different agencies that are related to each category. So this is a list of the agencies and offices related to civic engagement. And I'll share a couple of OCAPIA relevant examples from these offices. The Secretary of State's Election Division supports the Translation Advisory Council, which makes sure voting-related translations are accurate and culturally appropriate. As you can see here, the 5 most common languages spoken in Oregon other than English are Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, Russian, and Korean. OCAPIA may want to connect with this council, especially as it's an election year. The Legislative Policy and Research Office's Language Access Team makes sure Oregonians can participate in meetings with lawmakers and committee hearings with interpreters and translation of legislative documents. Here's a list of health-related agencies, boards, and commissions. Although more findings from other agencies are included in the complete slide deck, we chose to share today about data provided by the Oregon Health Authority. So on this slide, you can see how insurance coverage has changed from 2011 to 2021 for Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander individuals. Ultimately, this population has experienced a recent decrease in insurance coverage, dropping to 85% in 2021. OHA has programs to address inequities, including efforts around data disaggregation. These programs include REAL-D, which seeks to increase and standardize race, ethnicity, language, and disability data collection across ODHS and OHA. Another program, SOGI, helps increase and ensure standardized sexual orientation and gender identity data collection across ODHS and OHA. I believe OCAPIA Commissioner Mickey Durding may be involved in the REAL-D workgroup, which is exciting. And then here are the agencies associated with housing and family-related services. We chose to share some of the programs that are run by the Department of Human Services to demonstrate the needs the agency currently addresses. As you can see, the DHS's subdivisions include the Aging and People with Disabilities Division, the Child Welfare Program, the Developmental Disabilities Program, Self-Sufficiency Programs, Vocational Rehabilitation, and the Governor's Advocacy Office. Among the services these programs provide are food, cash, and medical benefits, support for children, youth and families, disability services, and crisis and safety resources. And then here you can see a list of the education-related agencies, boards, and commissions. And we selected today information provided by the Oregon Department of Early Learning and Care, the Oregon Department of Education, and the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. So first, the Oregon Department of Early Learning and Care created an Early Childhood Equity Fund that provides approximately $10 million for culturally specific kindergarten readiness and family support programming. These funds ultimately target the betterment of parent-child interactions, parenting education, early literacy and family literacy, and native language preservation in hopes of closing opportunity gaps for children and families navigating racial, economic, or language inequities. In this slide, you can see the demographics of the children served by the program's Early Childhood Equity Fund. Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and Asian children are among the smallest groups currently benefiting from this fund. Next, we are looking at the high school dropout rates as reported by the Oregon Department of Education. While Asian students have the lowest dropout rates in both the 2014 to 2015 and 2022 to 2023 school years, Pacific Islander students have consistently had some of the highest dropout rates over the years. Both groups experienced a decrease in dropout rates in the last decade. However, closing the dropout rate gap is an issue OCAPIA may want to prioritize. Lastly, here you can see completion rates at Oregon's public colleges and universities by race and ethnicity. Graduation rates are highest for Asian Americans, and some of the lowest rates are seen for Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders. All right, and then these are the environmental justice related agencies, boards, and commissions you may want to learn more about collaborating with. In 2022, House Bill 4077 established the Environmental Justice Council in the Office of the Governor. The 13-member statewide council is responsible for advising the governor and state natural resource agencies on environmental justice issues. Each of the advocacy commissions gets one seat on the EJC, including one member appointed from OCAPIA, Commissioner Raja Gopal. These are the agencies related to justice, safety, and policing. I'll share one example from the Department of Justice and one from the Secretary of State's office. The Department of Justice's Civil Rights Unit operates the Bias Response Hotline. On April 22nd, the DOJ released their You Belong campaign. It includes a social media toolkit with images and videos in multiple languages. OACO staff can support OCAPIA in getting this campaign on their platforms, and you may want to connect with the Civil Rights Unit to learn more about AANHPI bias incidents and responses. Every year, the Audits Division announces which performance and IT audits it's going to do. This is the annual audit plan for 2024 to 2025. All of these may be of interest to OCAPIA, and you may want to be in touch with the Audits Division to monitor progress and hear about findings, especially the audit of High School Graduation and College and Career Readiness Act at ODE, specifically for Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students. I'm going to turn it over to Kyle to share the last few slides.
Thank you, Brianne. Okay, so I am, here's the last of the agencies, boards, and commissions related to jobs in the economy. And I'm going to serve up a blast from the past for the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission example. So the Oregon Advocacy Commission's office has archived documents for OCAPIA that go back more than 20 years. I found some letters and promotional flyers that tell a story of collaboration between OCAPIA, or the Oregon Commission on Asian Affairs, as it was known at the time, and the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. 24 years ago, back in 2000, a situation occurred where many Korean American grocery store owners in Oregon were arrested, charged, and had their liquor licenses revoked for selling a product that they weren't supposed to. Members of the Korean American community in Oregon and the Korean American Grocers Association contacted the Oregon Commission on Asian Affairs for help with mediating this issue with the Liquor Control Commission. The Korean American store owners stated that they didn't understand the regulations around the product, and due to their liquor licenses being revoked, their incomes dropped by as much as 90%, and they felt their reputations in their communities had been really damaged. So the Commission on Asian Affairs invited the OLCC to their public meeting to discuss the issue and possible solutions, and they really worked together. And in February of 2001, they co-hosted a seminar at Portland City Hall on policies and procedures regarding liquor licensing compliance with a really specific focus on Asian American liquor license holders. So just this is, you know, kind of like a historical snapshot of something the commission has done. And it's the type of authority that OCAPIA has in influencing state level actions concerning AA and HPI population. So Brianne and I really enjoyed doing this research. I loved being able to connect with Brianne weekly on this. And we enjoyed putting this presentation together for you and hope it's helpful for understanding just the broad landscape of the state enterprise and the numerous possibilities that OCAPIA has for partnering with agencies to assess and improve policies and programs for Asian, Native, Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Oregonians. And it's in your statute, right? Like you have teeth with this. And so it's really exciting. So OCAPIA can partner with agencies for cultural competence training, language access, outreach and engagement, data collection and analysis, program design and evaluation, workforce diversity, community feedback, or joint advocacy for policies, funding, and resources. So we are going to I'll share, like, this is a Google slide deck. We'll share the link in here. We'll email it to everybody. There's a bajillion slides after it with a lot more data points. And I can even send you, you know, documents from those letters from 2000, you know. So, okay, so we're going to turn it over to you all, you know, so hopefully this information can help with your discussion that you're going to be having in the rest of this meeting. And we're happy to do whatever else, you know, whatever future directions you need us to do with this. So thanks so much.
Perfect. Thank you for that. That was great. Everybody, let's give them a round of applause. Hold on. Let me see here. Thank you, Brianne, as well. I hope you enjoyed your experience with OACO.
I did. Thank you. And Kyle is so fun. I'm going to miss working with you, Kyle. So thank you all.
Great. Please stay connected as well. If you ever want to get more deeper into like the political world, it is campaign season, so I know a lot of offices are looking for interns and stuff like that. So yeah, feel free to reach out and I can see if anyone's looking.
Thank you.
All right, and then with that, I will hand this over to Director Saunders and Saba to talk about the commission priorities discussion.
Absolutely. So I'll go ahead and jump in first. So now is the time to start discussing priorities as a commission. Thank you for Kyle and Brianne for presenting a lot of information and data points that may be of interest to OCAPIA commissioners. We heard of one earlier today around the COVID process, also around the CAST bill as well. So now is the time for you all to kind of determine what are the main priorities that OCAPIA wants to identify. In my opinion, it would be great to identify biennium goals or priorities to work on for the 2-year process. But I will leave that up to you all to decide, but that would be my recommendation. So if anybody wants to jump in with thoughts or ideas of other priorities that we haven't heard today, that time is now. And then at the end, I would love to recap all of the priorities that were mentioned and start taking some votes on identifying what are the main themes. So I see a couple of hands up and I'm really happy. So Commissioner Akaraji, you are first.
Yeah, thank you, Director Saunders. First of all, I want to make a clarification. At this point, we are not moving forward with the caste abolition or caste discrimination bill at this point because, like I said, I'm like practicing the equity framework. We are still working with the community and we'll go with what the community wants. And so that's where we are. But I do have, is it a time that you are asking us to share our priorities? I have brought the list. So I was so excited when I heard Brianna present because this is something that has been close to my heart for a while, and that was one of the topics that I chose, for me to pursue, which is the language access. So I did some research on it, and I still need some research, especially related to. There are two things. One is related to elections, because, for example, in the city of Corvallis, surprisingly enough, it was very hard for me to convince people that yes, we do have limited English proficiency people among our Asian and Pacific Islander populations. They couldn't believe it, but we do. So working for the city, I also know that there is a dire need for making the language access mandatory, because some cities do what they want to do, and they're like kind of meeting with the basic requirements, but there are a lot of gaps. So that is something very close to my heart. The other two priorities that I have, I think it also go with what Brian and Kyle presented, but also I would need some guidance in the sense that, for example, one of the things I have been talking about is the need for disaggregation of data. So when Brianna just talked about how the PI, Pacific Islanders, have a low retention rate at the high school level, we need to further disaggregate the data among the Asian students, Asian American students, and Asian diaspora, because among them there are going to be further groups that need attention. That's one thing that I would definitely want to work on, some kind of research and also policy making in that area. And the other area that I'm also looking at is equity and civil rights. For example, when I'm working on the Muslim Heritage Month, I had a hard time finding data. Like all that I know is like there's only 1% of about 1.1% of Muslim population in the state of Oregon. I want to know more about it. And when I wrote to some of the organizations, local Muslim organizations, I haven't heard back. Understandably so, they have their own things, but I was able to get this data from a national level agency, which seems to be providing accurate information from 2020. And then the immigrant experiences, South Asian immigrant experiences, we don't have any kind of, to the best of my, there might be some research going on that I don't know, but unless we have data, even for that matter, the caste discrimination, why we are kind of wanting to wait is because it's like a chicken and egg issue. We need to have data to make a case. Okay, this is what is going on. So these are all the things that are related to policy and, coming up with any kind of baseline requirement. So going back to both the language access and also the equity and civil rights, like I know the states could have a baseline requirement. Of course, the state agencies like high schools and all that, they would follow up with what the state mandates. But I'm not sure so much about the cities and counties, because they operate differently. So I'm kind of exploring the possibility of coming up with a kind of setting up a baseline requirement for the jurisdictions to have like a language access plan and actually implement them based on the data. Similarly, for any kind of discrimination, for like, we have the event tomorrow. So yeah, it's good to have the events and talk about it, but how do we walk our talk, right? So that's what I'm talking about. So if we can have, like right now, we have the protected categories, but what we don't have protected categories are like ancestry-based protected category we don't have in Oregon. So I'm kind of exploring what if the state can come up with a baseline requirement for HECC, for example, to collect data, start collecting data that without which we cannot even really say, oh, these are the occurrences that are happening. So same thing with BOLI or Civil Rights Office. So I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but with the language access or with the educational equity, we need data and then policy-driven approach. And those are my priorities. And my last priority is actually very internal because anywhere I work, I think that's what I think, Brianna and Kyle, thank you for bringing this up. Anywhere I go, whether it's a small organization, a big organization, there are always silos. So Senator Dembro last year, he talked about synergizing between Racial Justice Council and the commissions. And I wrote to all the chairs, the commission chairs of like last year, and heard back from Senator Phan and Senator Bushi from the OCBA. And so my selfish reason why I want to do this is because, let us say we have some members from the RJCP, in Albany or around surrounding areas. We can actually join forces together rather than, spinning our own wheels, right? So that's my internal priority, but that's a really important priority for me. And with that, I'm going to stop. And if you have questions, you can ask me. Thank you.
Just want to jump in really quick, and Commissioner Durding, you can go right after me. I do just want to nip the RJCP, so that's an active conversation that I'm having with Andre right now. So there's no determination at this moment in time, but that is something that's on his radar as the governor's policy advisor for racial equity. I just want to mention that in this meeting. So that is something that we'll have a broader discussion with all 4 commissions later this year. But it's not ready to be addressed right now. Commissioner Durding, feel free to jump in.
Right. So I've shared a lot of these priorities. So it probably sound like a broken record, but for those of you who are new, I'll try to keep it short because I have a spreadsheet on it like a dork. So for the first priority, what I propose is that we align our efforts with the governor's priorities, which are housing and houselessness crisis, number 1. Number 2 is behavioral health, access to health care, including mental health issues, services, and supports. And number 3 is education and early learning. And although OCAPIA serves at the pleasure of the governor, as Executive Director Saunders pointed out, aligning does not mean agreeing. So it's still be up to us to vote as we see appropriate. But knowing would be helpful to, information to include for consideration when making decisions about the priorities of the governor. And specifically when we're providing testimonies or we're selecting bills to provide testimonies for, it would be great to go, okay, which ones are in alignment with the governor's priorities. And then it would be great to partner with our sister organizations to see where there's synergies there. And then leverage the governor's office for research, messaging, template letters for starting the drafts. And then perhaps also League of Oregon Cities and Association of Counties, as they have surveyed cities and our shared constituents on matters of importance to us, to our shared constituents. And then also maybe leveraging subject matter experts, including the champions of the bills. And then the second thing for priorities for me would be prioritizing the I always get the pronunciation incorrectly, OCAPIA statutory priorities. So we have 7. But then we only meet every other month and for 2 hours at a time, and there's volunteers, and then we have staff capacity issue, and for this short session, we had 100+ bills. So for me personally, I'll share with you my perspective, but I'm so open to hearing other perspective and changing my top 3, but my top 3 for now would be the stable families in housing, because we're in a houselessness crisis, and housing justice equals racial justice. And then people of color, including API, are disproportionately impacted. APIs usually are undercounted and underreported. And, with multiple families and households with multiple jobs. And the second priority for me would be jobs and economy because of inflation. And in case of a recession, one low hanging fruit would be the supplier diversity, the one that I proposed to you, the COVID, and then maybe closing the gap there. And then really looking at needing data to learn the realities and the disparities, which is what we're going to be doing, is connecting with the DAS disparity study. And then anything we could do to advocate for leveling the playing field, to lift people out of hardship. What can we do to close the gaps for those BIPOC women communities and their historically limited access to capital? And the third is civic engagement, because it's election year. How do we increase awareness about the upcoming election? How do we get API to represent and vote? And what would it take for API to run for office and represent? In the 2022 Asian American voter survey, among Asian Americans that spoke a language other than English at home, 11% said that language has been a barrier in voting in previous election, and 42% said they would make use of voting assistance in their language. And then lastly is another priority for me would be representation. So for me, I would look to see what local bills in Central Oregon, since I'm from Central Oregon, and that would be great to have like all of us represent our local communities to see what bills could we bring to the commission for advocacy, support, and legislative testimony or policy advice. So there's a few things in there that I could bring forward. So for example, Senator Wyden is going to be proposing a bill regarding housing, and he's working with our local community with that, because we have like this big, huge need to have sustainable funding for homelessness shelters and vouchers and housing supports. So things like that. And then, well, this is kind of related to what I already mentioned, but again, like, with everybody else, I think data, studies, and reports throughout Oregon would be very helpful. It would be great to include in legislative testimonies, which could help educate and increase awareness, and data that could help us justify our recommendations to prioritizing equitable access, or propose bills that addresses what we learned from the data, or level the playing field in the equity and procurement. Or with the strategic plan process, what the success look like, we could include data in that. And I'd just like to point out that the White House actually shared that despite the tremendous growth, AAPIs are one of the most understudied racial groups in the country, and that it would just be really nice to have greater access to data to support better policies that reflect AAPI community realities and needs. And lastly, if we could include this somewhere in the priorities, is community communications and engagement. How do we increase our connections and reach, and how do we diversify the way we meet our communities where they are? That's it for me. Thank you so much.
Appreciate all of the priority recommendations as well. And Commissioner Roger Gopal, I see your hand up as well.
Your mic is off.
Still muted.
Sorry, can y'all hear me now? Okay, both commissioners, Gradu and Durding, really said a lot of things I'm going to repeat here, but I do want to emphasize data. I think since I joined the commission, besides being able to contribute in an area where I feel like I have community connections and expertise and passion, I have not been able to find the data to really help inform the priorities where I would want to focus my efforts. So I do think I will once again say disaggregating existing data, investing in creating more data, and engaging community voices in that process is going to be my #1 priority. I think that I will also agree that as we try to hone in on what our priorities are as a commission, in addition to data and community voices, I think there are 3 other things we can consider, and I would urge you all to think about as well, is our own capacity as a commission and individual commissioners. I know in the short term, we voted on a whole bunch of priorities, and we took, as far as I know, action on 1, and that's not blaming anybody. I think we all have really good intent when we're very excited to see bills that we want to support. But unless we're able to actually commit to doing something about it, I would say let's be reasonable. We don't have a big budget, and we have very little actual, human capacity. So let's think about our capacity, and to do that, I think it is going to be helpful to consider the 3 priorities of the governor that Commissioner Durding mentioned. And for me, among those 3 priorities around housing and homelessness, behavioral health, and education, I do want to emphasize, especially given Senator Denborough's presentation earlier that education and early learning are also one of my priorities. And that was the bill that we submitted testimony on behalf of, was related to bias in curriculum and history curriculum. And so that'll continue to be one of my priorities. So data, education, and then I think another factor to just consider is, outside the three priorities of the governor, if we as individuals, of course, have our own expertise and passions, I am excited to support that. So whether it is Commissioner Durding's proposal around the COVID modification, which I personally have experienced, anything I find out from the Environmental Justice Council, any future bills on CAST, those are areas that I'm also excited to participate, even though, you know, that's not within the three priorities of the governor. So I think that's in terms of subject matter area, those would be my priorities. I think that the other priority I have that's really about how we all work together is to continue to build some sort of helpful rubric, equity rubric, for us to be able to look at as we're thinking about our priorities. We had one meeting of the equity subcommittee, Commissioners Akaraju, Vice Chair Tanega, and I, and both Commissioner Akaraju and I had these tools that we think would be really helpful. We don't want to be prescriptive about anything, but want to just be helpful in providing tools for all of us to look at the equity implications of our actions. Because as we found out last year, like, we have a lot of blind spots, and there may be ways in which, as we're prioritizing some actions, we might be harming communities without intending to. Yeah, those would be the three: data, education and early learning, equity rubric, would be the three things.
Seb, I do see your hand up. If you have something to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Akaraju, for, sorry, Commissioner Rajagopal. Sorry, you came on both at the same time, and I always confuse the two of your names. I apologize. Thank you for saying that section. I just wanted to emphasize that. I did put, really focusing on SMART goals. When we do take a vote before, hope folks have more input, but before we take a vote, I hope that you will keep that in mind. What are the priorities that you specifically would want to work on and are willing to make time for? Because we do have some very broad, some big statute asks, and it's important to kind of make that into a reality with small bites that we can take on.
Yeah, and I can go next with my priorities. My priorities are going to be aligned with what Representative Wynn's priority is going to be, because that is the capacity that I'm going to have. So going into the 25 session, our priority is going to be chronic absenteeism. Oregon ranks at the top of absent rates in the entire country. So we currently have a work group that we're part of. And Senator Denbrough's chief of staff is actually on our team now to help us with that. So, and he's been great, Senator Denbrough. So thank you for allowing him to work with us. Our other priority is going to be on how can we support substitute teachers, and that is a task force that Senator Denbrough is leading, as well as Rep. Nguyen. So that is another thing that we're hoping to at least kind of get a foothold on as we head into 25. We are also working on potentially some child care policies, and then we did get a $2 million budget allocation for newcomers. So we are going to try to bring that back again, instead of as a budget note, but this time as like a full-on program. And I believe that is what we have. One of the more personal things that I'd like to work on, I'm hopefully going to be working with Representative Tran on this, and Senator Denbrough, we'd love to have you help us support this too. But I'm part of the Mian community, which is one of the smaller communities in the state, actually in the world, to be honest. There's not very many of us left. But during the like 60s to 80s, when communism was really big, our community, along with the Hmong community, supported America in their fight against communism. But a lot of our people don't get a lot of recognition, nor do many people even know we exist. So I believe SOCO at ERCO and PIFC proposed a House Joint Resolution. So we're hopefully bring that back, and I'd like to make that one of my bigger focuses, just because having that representation for our community is super big. I don't know if many of you know, but my position, like even as chief of staff in the legislative building, puts me as one of the higher ranking uh, public employees in my community. So that just goes to show how very little representation we have. So I just want to continue to do what I can. And Director Saunders, with chronic absenteeism, yeah, just that's something that Rep. Wen really like. That was her platform that she ran on. She's a subject matter expertise on this. She's been doing this for over 10 years. Um, and when kids aren't present in school, I think the data can probably tell you that when kids are in school, the likelihood of them being successful post-secondary is probably going to be a lot less likely. And the same could be said about especially people in our community. And I can say that that's pretty accurate for the Southeast Asian community. And I know that in that report that Brianne and Dr. Myers just gave to us, said that Asians had one of the lower dropout rates. I'd love to see how that looks in the Southeast Asian community, just because I'm very well aware that the Southeast Asian community, we see a lot of different issues than East Asians and South Asians, just like how South Asians, and we all have our different issues, right? But many of us came as refugees, so and many of us were kind of forced into the poorer areas of the state. So let's see. But yeah, those are my 3 priorities. And then other data about what is happening. We can look into it. Yeah, let me, Dr. Myers, let me connect you with Emery. He is our lead staffer with chronic absenteeism. So if I connect you with him, I think that'd be good.
Yeah, Chair, if I could just follow up a bit on the chronic absenteeism piece. This is not a new problem, but it's a problem that we're seeing nationally, greatly exacerbated by COVID. And it has, and actually, in some ways, that's a good thing because it's really brought urgency to it. But it's something that we are seeing quite acutely in our immigrant populations, actually, and low-income populations in general, where you may have, and we see it in kids of all ages, all grades, although it's probably worse in the high school years. But, we're often seeing older siblings staying home to care for younger siblings because the parents don't have any alternatives. And there's just a whole variety, and it is going to require all sorts of supports. So this is really, really important work. And I do think, going back to what Director Akaraju was saying about disaggregated data, I think that the more that we can get that data disaggregated, the better, and, to be honest, although we do now differentiate between Asian and Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian Island, I think even within the Asian community, further disaggregation would really be helpful. It may be hard to get that information, but if we could, I think it would be really useful because I think different communities face different challenges, and we can't really address those until we really understand what the reality is. But having them all lumped together is a big challenge. Thank you.
And going just kind of adding on to that of like the whole idea of kids taking care of other kids because of parents. That is something that I've dealt with firsthand. I know that many of us have dealt with that firsthand. But in the long term kind of idea, I do hope that we address. When I was a kid, I was helping my parents fill out medical forms, right? And that is something that I am very adamant that like I believe a lot of the misinformation of our community comes from probably kids filling out medical forms and not really understanding what these things mean. And that's not to say that like some kids aren't capable of doing that, but at the end of the day, when you're 7 or 8 years old and you're trying to be a translator to adults and you're talking about medical conditions, that is some long-term thing that I think that should be addressed at some point. But again, just to move forward, Director Saunders, I do see your hand up, so I'll let you continue.
No problem, and I appreciate all the additional context. I just missed the school piece, so I just want to mention that. But I do have a question for Senator Dembro, and this is if you're aware of like any movement around REAL-D and SOGI and expanding that law from just medical settings to make it, across all K through 12, criminal justice system, so on and so forth. I do know OHA is kind of in the process of like realigning or redefining, I should say, REAL-D and SOGI around the categories, mainly around the SOGI piece at this point. Just wondering if there's, an appetite to change that law and expand it.
It's a really good question. I've only heard about it in the context of OHA. And, there was a lot of discussion of it during COVID, I remember. There's some controversy there. As I think you can imagine, there was controversy, but, Oregon remained committed to really focusing on REAL-D and SOGI at that time, despite some Republican pushback. And, so far, I think this state has remained committed to the principles of equity and just having this kind of data. And I'd like to think that that will continue. But I haven't heard any talk about specifically expanding that to other areas. But I think it's a great concept and something this commission really should pursue together with its partners.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Senator. And if nobody else has any other comments or priorities they want to make clear, it's okay to not have priorities now. But the legislative session will be going to start in, I believe, January, and it would be a 6-month session this time around. So we do have some time. Oh, go ahead, Senator Dembro.
No, just to add to that, and I think Saba has something to say too, but if we want to pre-session file bills, the deadline for that is the end of September. And so it's not too soon to start thinking about things. If we have some, they can be introduced through the governor's office, I assume, but I'm sure we can also find legislative sponsors for them. And it doesn't necessarily need to be in its final form, but it's good to have concepts in as placeholders, by that point. So do be thinking about that. And then, of course, you can continue to introduce bills up to the point that the session begins. But if you file them by the end of September, they're included in that first batch that comes out, gets assigned to committees. So, it's beneficial to do so if you can.
Thank you, Senator Dembro. I just wanted to note that we do have one more item in old business before we transition to the executive director's report. I don't want to cut this conversation off. It's really helpful. Just want to note that we're starting to see some themes, which is great. Would love for folks to be to voice their priorities and name some of those more just as quickly as you can. So hopefully we can dedicate maybe 4 more minutes to this and at 12:45 transition to our next item, which does require a vote, by the way.
Sorry, are you saying we need to vote for our priorities today, or are you just saying that if we do that, then eventually we need to?
They do need to be voted on eventually. I think Terrence and I would prefer if that happened yesterday, just so we can keep up with the timeline that Senator Denbrough mentioned. Some of the legislative stuff that you might want to work on does require a vote here. Just so you all as a commission can move forward. It also helps us, the team, better work internally with the governor's office and have their support on board. So just naming that out loud, because having voted on priorities not just gives us a unified agenda, but it also allows us to do things like Commissioner Rajagopal mentioned, having an equity lens on the items that we are working on and thinking more long-term rather than being reactive.
For sure. And I see, sorry, I need to see whose hand's up right now. Commissioner Bowling, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I did have one personal priority. And this is a little bit of a blurred line between my job and this, but we have a prison pre-apprenticeship program right now, and we're working to make sure that people have opportunities when they come out of prison. One big issue we've been consistently running into is something called the county of origin release, where you are required by law to go back to whatever county you committed your crime in. This is incredibly problematic for a lot of our members, or I guess hopefully future members who are being released back to Douglas County or other areas that are very far from the Portland metro area, where there's a lot less work available, or their parole officers are just not as willing to work with them and allow them to travel for a career opportunity. So that's something I believe Rep. Sanchez is interested in. I need to circle back with her on that. But just from an equity lens, just making it as easy as possible for people to transition back into society after they're released from prison is something that I'm personally very interested in working on.
Commissioner Bowling, if you could keep me in the loop on that, that'd be great. That sounds like something I'd be pretty interested in as well. All right. Let's see here.
Do folks feel ready to vote? I do see a number of items in chat. Thank you everyone for posting some of the themes. Do you all feel ready to vote? Do you want to vote? Do you want to talk more about this? Commissioner Chenega, go ahead.
Thank you, Saba. Well, my priorities, it's my one. I mean, a lot of it kind of relates and mirrors what the governor's priorities. Well, for me, it has to be the housing homelessness, and that's, to me, that needs to be considered with. But in reality, I think with everything is important. But to Commissioner Rajagopal's point, is that it's all dependent on capacity, and if we spread ourselves too thin, I think then things kind of go off to the wayside. But I think to Saba's point, I think locking into the one SMART goal, the one goal, if we can get that right from the get-go, I think that's a win. I mean, any of these that we do, it will be a win. And what Commissioner Bowling just mentioned about the after prison, the work, I mean, that's intriguing to me as well, because, and I think Senator Denbrough touched on this in the past, that's intriguing to me because they still have a life to live after what they've done, and I think that's important. And there's a lot of different obstacles and different challenges and barriers that we will face as we encounter all these different bills that we want to work on. But I think for me at this time would be the housing homelessness.
So it sounds like data desegregation, houselessness, in education are like the big, at least the top three that we seem to kind of agree on right now. Does anyone else have anything that they want to add on to that? Language access education. I see.
I do want to note, Commissioner Pond, that the commission does need to vote. And so what I would really appreciate is if you could list a priority, data, disaggregation, and vote on each of those, just so we can have a clear goal within the agency and better be able to support you all.
Sorry, so you want to just do voting through like each one of them?
Correct. It would be a bit difficult to do a blanket vote on all of them or some of them. It might not, the discussion might get in the way of the vote. But Terrence might have more to add there.
Yeah, just really quick, what I would recommend is talking about the priority theme areas for this meeting in particular, and then refining the actual priority, and bring that to the next meeting or schedule an off bi-monthly meeting. And that's probably what I would prefer, just to get ahead of that September deadline. So whether it's meeting like next week or, in a couple of weeks, once folks had a little bit of time to dive into some of these priority areas, that would be my preference. However, you can choose which you wish. And Commissioner Akaraji?
See. What do the
So I just wanted to say, in response to what Saba said, so like a couple of things. Data and disaggregation can go together. So data collection and also analysis. Disaggregation is actually data analysis. So they can go together. They don't have to be two different things. The other thing I was also thinking, Saba, when you said we need to come up with some bite-sized implementable pieces. So you can see there are broad themes, and there's a lot of focus on education, for example. And based on what I heard from Chair Fawn and Commissioner Rajagopal and others. So if we can have that as a broader theme and kind of look into the bite-sized pieces in terms of what we want to achieve, and then they can actually complement each other. The data and the theme that we are proposing, they are going to work together. So that way I don't see any competition, but it's a complementing of priority. So I just wanted to point that out.
Absolutely. And I do want to highlight what Aparna, Commissioner Rajagopal mentioned in the chat, that it is a vote to adopt priority areas. You do not need to necessarily decide what specifically within that area you would like to focus on today. And I would absolutely second Terrence's recommendation that if there needs to be a separate meeting just to discuss commission priorities, that would actually be really great. So you can have that whole meeting time dedicated to the priorities discussion.
Would any of you be opposed to doing another meeting, perhaps maybe early June? If that works for everybody, I'd be open to doing that. But if not, it seems like the top three ones so far is education, data analysis, and housing. But I do want to give commissioners time to think about what they'd like to prioritize heading into the long session. So any comments from other commissioners?
So I have a comment. So not just priorities for long session, but past session and in between sessions, I think this is a good time to just align, like, what does OCAPIA want to work on, regardless if there's a legislative session or not. So in my opinion, there's opportunity to invite like state agencies to these meetings, have them report out to best give you all information. So when it is time to submit those LCs to the Legislative Council, that where the gaps are in legislation, or to introduce a new concept, So I really think that's an opportunity right now to define those. I'm also going to remit my time for the ED report since it is in writing to allow for more time for this discussion, as well as the next and last agenda item. So it's up to you if you want to take like a theme vote right now, which I would recommend. And then maybe in June, early June, like refine those goals to something that's a little bit more like the SMART goal method to really like narrow down the scope. So that would be my recommendation.
Go ahead, Sophie.
The only thing that I wanted to note specifically for a separate meeting is that we do have 2 commission meetings in the first 8-9 days of June. So I would just request that OCAPIA have a separate meeting either late May or maybe mid to late June. That's all.
Can I just jump in really quick? Y'all are coming to the Capitol and having lunch together and hanging out together on May 30th. And so there are some opportunities. I know there are a couple folks who can't make it. So there would, of course, need to be moments to ensure everybody has a say in this and their vote isn't excluded or their input isn't excluded. But I do just want to say, like, May 30th is a really good opportunity too for OCAPIA members to meet and have some cross collaboration to kind of learn what other commissions are working on as well.
Can we do a quick hybrid meeting? Would y'all be open to a hybrid meeting on May 30th? And then we can have a quick, maybe 20-30 minute discussion about these
Going to
priorities.
be very difficult to pull off on May 30th. We have all 4 commissions attending ledge days, and there's just not going to be enough time for that to be set up during the ledge day. We could do like after, so the 31st, I want to say is a Friday, but don't quote me on that. That may be an opportunity to meet maybe during like the lunch hour. I hate to say 5 p.m. on a Friday, but there may be opportunity there.
For sure. Could we just send out a doodle poll or something and we can just, yeah, we can figure something out. So we can, is it
I
safe
can
to say?
take on the scheduling of priorities meeting. So I can send out a poll and we can decide date and time. I think it would probably be best to do a Zoom meeting separate from June or May 30th.
Okay.
Does that sound like a good next step for this discussion? I don't want to end this. I do want to note that there is one more thing before we part, but I see some hands up. Are we okay with a separate email poll where we can decide what we'll do as our next meeting? Excellent. I'm seeing heads nodding. Thank you. Sorry, I might have said Zoom. Teams. We're going Teams going forward. Commissioner Akaraju, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just have a quick question because Dr. Sanders just mentioned the legislative session. So the priorities that we are setting up, are some of them going to be long-term priorities, or is it like, are some of them are likely to go into the legislative session? That's my question. Are they separate or are they part of that? Because yeah, like there are the priorities that I mentioned, like I'm kind of thinking that like, what if we pursue something else with that? So that's the reason. Language access, for example.
Yeah, so my personal opinion is that these can run past this legislative session. We are running on a very short timeline to like draft legislative concepts to introduce as bills. So I just want to be like realistic in regards to the timeline, not saying that it can't be done, but there's roughly like 3 to 4 months before that deadline pops up. So if OCAPI is able to determine priorities, I would say like within the next couple of weeks. To me, there may be an opportunity to draft some legislative counsel, but there would also, in my professional opinion, need to be a conversation at least with the state agencies that would be impacted, also working with the governor's office and things of that nature. So I would say that it's yes, for the 25 long session, there may be opportunities to provide testimony for some of these areas that are already happening for like the data disaggregation. I would imagine there's going to be a bill introduced in that regard, but it's also building the foundation for the short session. And then, in my opinion, like every session after that, because this would be a regular conversation for each commission.
Yeah, I will say that it may be a bit late to work on, and Senator Denbrough, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a lot of the state agencies are already kind of prepping for 25 already. So any kind of policy development that you may have to wait until 26 anyways. But again, Senator Denbrough, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know some of the agencies that we're working with are already kind of developing policies for 25.
Yeah, so my principle is it's never too late, Chair. And just to remind you that, I mentioned pre-session filing at the end of September. We don't have to provide a bill at that point, or we don't have to draft anything at that point. All we need is to identify a problem and a solution to the problem. And then we work with legislative counsel in what that could look like in terms of legislation. And they would do that drafting between the end of September and mid or so December. And it can be a very kind of back and forth sort of process with them. So I wouldn't, don't feel like you have to come up with a final product, a finished product in advance of that. And, if it's something that is going through an agency, then the timeline is much slower just because of the internal hierarchy and, bureaucracy of the agency, which I think we've all experienced. But, if we're going the legislative route, it's a more direct kind of thing.
For sure. And then in the interest of time, I do want us to continue to move forward. Is there any other last comments before we call the good of the order? Or Director Saunders, you said the executive director's report, do you still want to go through that real quick?
Absolutely. I'm only going to hit the highlights. I do just want to mention, so the state agency timeline that came and went. Unfortunately, we had to get those ideas into the governor's office January 22nd. Also submitted the LCs that we did get a green light on around April 30th. I was going to say 40th, but 30th, as well as our POP. So that deadline has passed to introduce anything on behalf of agencies, but community route definitely is the route to go. In regards to the ED report, OCAPIA still has $5,601.47. The other fund budget is also looking fairly strong, about $1,571. We also have a vacancy on OCAPIA, so I did fill in that slot. A new commissioner is going to be confirmed on May 29th, ideally, from 11:30 to 2 p.m. at the Capitol. Recommend any of the commissioners to attend as well and greet your new OCAPIA commissioner. Don't have the privilege to say the name at this moment in time as it's still under wraps until sometime next week. But as soon as that happens, I will be more than happy to share with the chairs. Also just want to just say a highlight in regards to the POPs that I submitted. So I submitted 4 POPs, one for interns, essentially paid internships for the research, just highlighting what Brianne did and ideally to have that as a consistent resource for all of the commissions. Also, we are extending the health equity positions until June 30th, 2026. And then reconverting those positions into permanent positions to support staff or to support the commissions. So those are likely going to be 3 positions. I'm also going to put the disclaimer that none of these are official until We understand like the revenue forecast and things of that nature going over the next couple of months. But that's what we have the green light for at this moment in time. Also some other items around commissioner reimbursement and travel. So I'm gonna stop there for the highlights, just due to time. But I do want to just mention those.
Okay, thank you, Director Saunders. And then Saba, go ahead.
Thank you. I apologize, Commissioner Girding. I'm jumping ahead of you. I just wanted to note we are at 102, but we have one more vote. So I would love to kind of take care of that before we go somewhere else, because we have quorum right now, but it's at quorum. And so if we lose more folks, I just wanted to note that. So our next meeting is falls on July 4th, which is the July 5th, which is the first Friday of July. But July 4th is a Thursday and a holiday, and we will all be off. And I imagine a lot of folks will try to extend that into a long 4-day weekend. That being said, I would love to hear from you all if you would like to move that meeting either to earlier that week or the following week. And also keeping in mind, July 10th, our agency will be supporting the Commission on Hispanic Affairs for their meeting. So if we can avoid Monday the 10th, that would be ideal. Does anyone have a time, either the first week of July, that they would like to propose, or maybe just bump it to Friday, July 12th? Thoughts on that?
I'm good with the week after.
Same.
Same time, just bump to 1 week later?
Sounds good to me, if that
Yeah.
works for everybody else.
I do
Yes.
need a vote, and I need a second, and any oppositions, just so we have it on record.
Saba, this is Friday, July 12th at 11.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'd like to make a motion to move our next commissioner meeting to July 12th at 11.
Second.
All right. All in favor say aye.
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 All right, any nays? Perfect.
You'll send a reminder, right?
We will move the meeting on the calendar, so you have the updated calendar invite. You'll get the reminders, all of that. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. I do want to give Commissioner Girding some time back, and also request that you all please read Director Terrence Saunders' report, because there's quite a few things happening in May for API Heritage Month, and I would really appreciate you all showing up, particularly at engagements where your fellow commissioners have been asked to speak, and showing support in any way that you can. I have sent an extensive list last Friday to you all as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And I am excited to see you all tomorrow here at the Lansu Chinese Garden.
All right. And then Commissioner Girding, if you.
Oh, I just wanted to get a clarification. Should I get started on that letter to COVID?
We do need a vote on that.
Okay.
So that being said, we can add that to part of the priorities discussion, if you're okay with that.
Okay, yes. I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure. Okay, great.
No worries.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Just one comment. We will send a poll out to commissioners to schedule that next meeting. If we can have a date range, that would be perfect. But if not, we'll look at the first week of June, and I'll even say the last week in May.
Sorry, can we have some discussion around the COVID? If I strongly believe there needs to be some guardrails on how that's written and rolled out.
Oh, yes. So when we draft the letter, absolutely, we'll have to do it together, is what I propose.
Yeah, we can have that discussion in the July or the next commissioner meeting.
Yeah, when I send out the poll, I'll propose about an hour, and the co-chairs can decide how much time to allocate for the COVID discussion particularly. And those will be the only two, well, the priorities will be the overall theme of that meeting, but COVID will be a part of that vote. So the intention of that next meeting is so that you can all discuss all of these priorities at length at the next meeting without sort of any pressing deadlines, time deadlines.
Okay, I do need to jump to another meeting. So if we could, the meeting is adjourned.
Okay.
You have
Julio?
Senator Dumbro there. One more.
Yeah, no, I was just going to suggest that Mickey, if you could, when you draft your letter, send it to Lauren in advance of our discussion. I think that would be helpful.
Sounds perfect. Thank you so much.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.